Now that we've talked about strategic language, I want to shift into talking about stylistic language. And this, when I teach this class in person, is perhaps my favorite part of the course. I love all parts of the course. I love stock issues, I love doing the impromptu, but stylistic language is just a delight. It should be fun to write and even more fun to deliver. And as we enter into this, I'm going to be using stylistic devices that have been with us for millennia. And what I want you to think about these stylistic devices as, I want you to think about them as equations for eloquence. There's a formula here to organizing a phrase or set of phrase or a sentence. That's the equation, and I mean that in the mathematical sense of the word. And your variables are going to be your topic and your value language, some of the value language hopefully that you were working on from the past lectures. But these are equations for eloquence. Oh, how unfortunate that that was my screwed up word. But what I want you to do is be able to weave style into your speech. You should integrate it within the paragraph and into what you're talking about. So the idea is, don't have your speech over here and just a few stylistic devices here. Jammed in style often doesn't work really well. You want to be able to build up to it, integrate it into that presentation. So if you were talking about, if you were on a PTA meeting, encouraging parents to donate more time to the local elementary school, and you tried to jam in a stylistic device, well, it may not work, right? You're like, well, donating time to your local school district is helping your own children improve their education and understand the value of volunteering. It's a gift that everyone can benefit from. Like dawn's first light after a terrible dark night of storms, hope rising above the dew-soaked grass, shining as bright as a newborn star. Anyway, so there's a sign up in the back of the room if you've got some time that you would like to donate. It doesn't work there, right? It's not integrated. You've got speech over here, style over here. What you want to be able to do is draw in that style, build it in so you are tacking back and forth between more stylistic and plain-spoken parts of the speech. But style should be something that you just begin to develop an ear for so you know when to integrate it. In the persuasive speech for this class, I'm asking you to write a stylistically rich speech because I think that is a good activity to engage in. But even if you never do a speech for this class, and that is totally fine, I want you to be able to take this stylistic understanding and think about how you're going to bring it over to your other types of speeches. Not only wedding toasts and clearly stylistically rich, high oratory moments, but being able to bring in a plain-spoken stylistic device to add to that next business meeting because it helps sharpen the attention, strengthen your argument, and make for a more enjoyable speech overall. So we're going to go ahead and move through these various stylistic devices. Typically, I'll talk about one, we'll listen to a couple of examples, sort of unpack it a little bit and move on to the next. So we'll do this in this lecture, and then we'll finish out the stylistic devices in the next. So I want to begin with alliteration. Alliteration, simply the repetition of consonant sounds. Probably many people are familiar with that. The repetition of vowel sounds is assonance, but the repetition of consonant sounds. So let's go ahead and take a listen to Bill Clinton's, this is his 1992 DNC address, Democratic National Convention acceptance address when he was nominated to be the Democratic candidate back in 1992.
Somewhere at this very moment, a child is being born in America. Let it be our cause to give that child a happy home, a healthy family, and a hopeful future.
So in that one, I mean, the alliteration is pretty subtle. Happy home, a healthy family, and a hopeful future. And so being able to use alliteration is nice because you can build in some stylistic richness to the speech, but it doesn't jump up and down and scream for attention like the metaphor I used in that hypothetical PTA speech. So let's take a listen to another use of alliteration. This is Ronald Reagan speaking at the V-Day ceremony address at the Vietnam War Memorial.
And our nation itself is testimony to the love our veterans have had for it and for us. All for which America stands is safe today because brave men and women have been ready to face the fire at freedom's front.
And alliteration is very good, but there are limits, right? You can say face the fire at freedom's front, but you probably can't say face the fire at freedom's front fiercely, ferociously, with a fine fortitude, right? There's a limit to how much that can go on. Okay, so alliteration is great, but it has some sort of built-in limitation. So alliteration, ascendanton. Ascendatin, you're taking normally occurring conjunctions and just dropping them. So you're lining up things really quickly. And the nice thing is, it sounds sort of familiar, it's easy to understand, but it also sounds a little bit different, a little bit strange. So there's clearly style happening in those passages. So in Jimmy Carter's 1976 DNC address, he starts off and he says, in his speech he says, "Now as an engineer, a planner, a businessman, I see clearly the value to our nation of a strong system of free enterprise based on increased productivity and adequate wages." So that opening section there is the ascendatin. He's just dropping the and. It doesn't throw people off, but it sounds slightly different. Here in the U.S., the Marine Corps have a slogan: "Be one of the few, the proud, the Marines." Now we wouldn't necessarily say that as a sentence, but you can almost hear, again, as an equation, an equal sign, or in this case, maybe a greater than, equal to. So be one of the few, which is greater than or equal to the proud, which is greater than or equal to the Marines. So by dropping out the conjunction, we're sort of creating a line of equivalencies and really ending on Marines there. Now, we've got ascendatin, which is dropping out those conjunctions. On the other side, we've got polyscendatin, which is adding in extra conjunctions. So you can hear this this is Barbara Jordan's 1992 DNC address.
We must change that deleterious environment of the 80s, that environment which was characterized by greed and hatred and selfishness and mega mergers and debt overhang.
You can hear really a nice sort of a syncopation in there and a sense of hearing the rhythm of that stylistic device, hearing the rhythm of that spoken discourse. Now, polyscendatin is great because it allows you to do that. But when using style, you want to make sure that you can use the style. So I've got an example here of polyscendatin gone horribly awry. And this comes from a well-heeled speaker, someone who is quite adept at it. This is from Howard Dean. He was a former governor of Vermont, and he was running for the Democratic nomination in the 2004 presidential primaries. And this clip that you're going to hear comes from when he had come in fourth in the Iowa Democratic caucuses, which is often seen as a major indicator of candidate strength. And so it's kind of disappointing result. And so he is speaking to his supporters there and really trying to rally them with an inspiring talk. And he sort of falls in, it's sort of, ad hoc, but he falls into polyscendatin, and it kind of gets away from him. So let's go ahead and take a listen to it.
We're going to California and Texas and New York, and we go to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan, and then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
How unfortunate, right? And you can hear a lot going on there. The polyscendatin is working right up until the very end. So I mean, polyscendatin can really work in this way of really getting people interested and involved, but it's got to end. So as you listen to that clip, and don't worry, I'll play it here again in a second, but you can hear him building and building and building, and then he reaches this point, and we need resolution to that stylistic device. He goes, California and Washington and Michigan, and then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Where do you go? We're way up there. You can't just, going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. So I would really like everyone to think, it's been great having you all here.